Okay, welcome to the Working Wellbeings podcast. I am really pleased to introduce our next guest, who's Ryan Hopkins joined us today. Hey, Ryan.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. So, should we get straight into it? It'd be great to
Let's
kind of
go.
find out a little bit more about you. One of the things that we do on this podcast is we like to get a little bit of, it's almost the unfiltered version of how you got to where you got to today. So, you can start as early or as late as you want, but yeah, what led you to the point that you find yourself in now?
Yeah, it's just how long you want this story. We said we got 45 minutes today, so I feel like you've just asked the question. That'll be your one and only one you get. We tried to do this for a while, didn't we? I remember you've had the studio set up, so it's nice to come and actually get the opportunity to talk to you today. I appreciate it. Yeah, well, my working career started when I was about 13. So I used to sweep up hair in a barber shop. And as we were speaking about haircuts before, all I've got with regards to hair now is a terrible mustache. But that's where my work started. Started working at a young age, then was working in a pharmacy on the counter when I was 16. So while I was doing my A levels, unsurprisingly, I didn't do very well. Um, then started training to be an electrician.
Why'd
Um,
you say why'd you say unsurprisingly?
Surprisingly, because I was working full time.
Right, okay.
So
Yeah, I got you. So you
yeah,
were just focused on work and not focused on school.
yeah, like circumstance, undiagnosed dyslexia, dyspraxia as well, and just I was good at maths and stuff, but never able to focus when I was younger. So a lot of reasons for that and understanding now, but it's good because it brought me on another journey and brought me to this place today. The training to be a Sparky, which I really enjoyed. And I used to play rugby at the weekends, and then about 2 years in, had an accident where I broke my leg and my ankle, which meant I couldn't walk for a year, and lost that ability to carry on the apprenticeship. Lost my funding, then was unable to continue the role and just end up in a really dark place. Couldn't see a future, had no qualifications. That was it. I was a rugby player in Sparky. That was my identity. That was all gone like that. And then when you lose that at that age, when you haven't quite worked out who you are and you're working through a lot of other things, it took me to a really difficult place and nearly didn't come out of that period if it wasn't for my mum. That met, I then developed bulimia, but I couldn't tell anyone at that time. Started to lose the weight, but couldn't tell anyone. Got a job in the bank in Halifax on the counter. I was pretty good. So I could sell anything to anyone. You come in to I'd get some change out your passbook, and I'd have you in for a credit card before you realise what was going on.
Leaving with a mortgage, yeah.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, like yeah, I'd like to get out a fiver. So I'm like, yeah, that's interesting. But if you considered buying a house in the area, no. So, well, I was doing that for a while, and I was struggling mentally at the time. Met someone. We were like, she was like, "Do you want to go traveling?" So we went one way to Argentina. Worked around South America for about a year. Set up a hostel business in Ecuador, helping an indigenous family on the side of a mountain in Otavalo to build it and then launch it. I
No
helped them
way.
get loans and stuff. I taught myself Spanish. I was thinking, I am fairly reasonably useful, whereas I never thought I was, given my academic career up to that point. Wanted to go to university, came back. We only got accepted to like the worst uni in the country in like the Sunday Times list. They were like, "Oh, we'll give them a go." Started working my butt off there. Transferred to Oxford Brookes when I was in my second year. Then I started working as a bouncer, so I did a lot
What
of
what were
that.
you doing at uni?
International business management. After setting up the hostel, I thought this makes sense. I could do something in this field, use the language, hopefully work in the Latin market of sorts. I started teaching myself some Brazilian Portuguese as well, so I can speak like conversational Brazilian Portuguese. And then transferred to Brooks, and I was working as a bouncer at that time through university, finished, applying for tons of grad schemes. Finally, after a load of failed final interviews and a load of dodgy, cheap ties that I had to buy, got a job on the Deloitte grad scheme, was like the world's oldest graduate at like 25, 26, I think it was. Worked there, working digital transformation, started to share my story one piece at a time and the little things I was doing inside a desk and realised there's something here, and had an affinity towards creating groups where people could share what they were going through. And this was a long time ago. Then started to want to do more in that space, set up like the wellbeing function at a project I was on for like 200 people. And I was like, this is me. And I was up for like the Rising Star Award for the work we did in the project in the consulting industry. And I was like, I think I've found my thing. But I very much felt like a fish out of water my first time at Deloitte, like a bouncer or a former electrician surrounded by people who had it all together. I sort of struggled a lot of that time.
Can I ask with Deloitte? So did they already? Because I know they do quite a lot around that now. Around what do they call it? Human sustainability.
That's the market. That's what they take to market. Yeah.
Yeah, but did that already exist before you joined Deloitte? Was that something you
No,
moved into or helped set up?
that's what I came back to do.
Right.
So I left because I wanted to do this full time. And I was like, I don't care so much about helping organizations to sell more vacuums or like digital transformation. I honestly don't give a shit. I care about the people inside the business who are delivering the transformation. That's what I can do. Using those skills, the project management, everything else, and just being a bit of a, I don't know, I feel like I'm good with people. And I think that's been learned from a varied career up until that point. And then went to work at Sainsbury's, leading wellbeing there at Sainsbury's Tech. And then that was cool. Started to share bits more on socials. Then got made redundant, went to Finastra, where I was the future of work lead, did some amazing stuff. We like saved the business 2.4 million hours looking at how we use Teams and emails, and then did return to work hybrid. Loved it. Doing more writing and speaking now. Then got made redundant again. I was thinking if I picked the wrong career, I
Yeah.
should have stayed at Deloitte the first time. Then James Lewis, who's the human sustainability lead, was like, "We're building something here. Do you want to come and like help scale it up?" So I came back to build the wellbeing business that we took to market. Came back, we scaled that, positively influenced the lives of like 1.1 million people now with the work that I've delivered. And then saw Jack after presenting on a webinar with the MD of Bupa for the UK, and my trousers were split open. And Jack were announcing their partnership on that call, and they were like, "We got something quite cool. We'd like you to see." They showed me the platform, and I was like, I think this can like scale what I want to do. And since then, the past 3 years, yeah, it's been 2 TED Talks, the book, now leading this at Jack, supporting Bupa to transform healthcare to get people in faster, better educated. Yeah, it feels like things are really flying now. But yeah, not a linear journey, that's for sure. Started 19 years ago on the barbershop floor. Took me around the world into basically every industry that you can possibly think of. But because of that, I think it's put me in a really appreciative position now and understanding the people that I'm trying to deliver the interventions for. If you're on a building site, you're working with your hands or X, Y, Z. Like, yeah, I think it really, really helps inform how I turn up now. So I know it's a
Yeah,
bit long.
yeah. No, that's something that's come up in previous episodes of this, speaking to different wellbeing leaders, and we've kind of knocked about the idea that sometimes you think because the job of like a well-being leader or jobs in this space are still in their relative infancy, although it doesn't feel like that for us because we worked in it for a little while, like they are compared to others. And therefore, do we need more well-trodden career paths so that people can follow them? The answer might be yes. But then also, there is a real benefit from people coming through these squiggly paths and they've got different experiences that they bring to the role and all the rest of it.
The magic happens cross-functionally. It doesn't happen by a well-being person pushing an event with the best well intent in the world. It happens when they collaborate with real estate to change the office. It happens when they collaborate with the IT team to change the meeting culture. It happens when the leaders start to operate in a more like sustainably productive fashion instead of trying to drive people. We change the KPIs. Like that's where the magic happens. And I've been in a wellbeing role where I've been a glorified events coordinator, and I've been in one which wasn't called wellbeing, where wellbeing was the outcome. It's almost like the evolution of the role is changing. But a lot of people in those positions, they get into it like you, like me, because they want to help, but they're unable to because the scope is limited within the team. And I
Yeah.
think by doing those varied roles and sitting in between and picking on the things in the business that are going to have the tangible impact is it's almost just like creating a cross-functional discipline. But that's where the evolution of this is going, I think.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, and it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how it changes over the coming years, how these roles change and whether they are just more embedded into different parts of the business rather than being these standalone roles or whether it's both. I'm not too sure. Be interesting to see.
I do hope so. I think with more measurement that's coming slowly, like it kicked off with the Deloitte Mental Health Report 2017, £1 spent, £5 back. That's like the OG, Liz Hampson, the team. Then like from there, it's developing, but still the real measurement of this as a discipline inside the organization is next to none. So like 1 to 2% of companies are using proper organizational data such as attrition, absenteeism to measure their efforts. We're all working off of assumptions and feels with the best will and intent in the world. And until that changes, and then you can grow out of the small bit of the business we could influence, it's not going to change from where we are. So there's going to be some real difficult moments for people in those roles to measure the effectiveness of their work and find out that it's not having an impact. But by doing so, then we can really lean into the things that are going to make the change. So yeah, we'll have to move backwards, I think, before we move forwards. And we're seeing it with D&I roles in the US that are being rolled back in the face of like changing ESG requirements, and they're saying it's not having an impact, but they can and they do, but perhaps the one-off events are not having the impact. Rather, the more sustainable things like pay equity and everything else are absolutely important, but maybe just focus it. There was like a slight repivot. Then we can pull together the well-being, D&I, purpose teams, because they're all trying to do the same thing, but currently cannibalizing one another's effort.
Yeah, it's an interesting way of putting it. I've wrestled with that idea a little bit of like, where should well-being lie, and should it be occupational health, or should it be health and safety, or where's D&I come into it, and all the rest of it. And like you say, the good side is it just shows there's more parts of the business that are, interesting in this stuff broadly. The downside is, are they stepping on one another's toes, and it can do some damage as well. Like, yeah. So I'm positive about the whole DEI movement. I think there's a whole lot of good that can come out of that. But at the same time, it is a more it's a hot potato compared to health and safety, for example, which is just people just take that seriously, right? But the risk is that with companies, like you said, in the US, paring back on things like DE&I, does health and safety go with it? So would they then? Some people would be emboldened to say, "Well, we've got rid of this bit, so can we get rid of a bit more?" And it might do more harm than good. I'm not sure. I don't know.
Yeah, you would definitely hope not. Like, well, we see it in the Oxford research recently. Individual interventions don't work. I think that like a financial well-being solution isn't going to work for everyone. Is it going to change some people's lives and really help them? For sure. Are you looking for 100% utilization with any health or well-being offering? No. Like, is it going to support people, keep them happy, healthy, and at work? For sure. The average salary of someone, say in the UK, I think it's like 40. Say it's 40, 38, whatever. That person leaves the business. It's going to cost you 6 months worth of their salary to hire and retrain them. That happens twice, right? That's like 40 grand, say. And if it costs 20k for this intervention that could potentially keep 0.5% of the work in work where they weren't going in before, then it's worth itself. So I think the measurement was wrong. Like, it's never a panacea. It's like, how can we support a diverse set of individuals from all walks of life, like you, myself, all people in my team here, and everyone else who's going through something completely different. And there's like two sides of it. And I think we're conflating the two things. We just push one thing at everyone, individual intervention, but call it an organizational one. Whereas what we should do is focus on creating the culture, the space, the flexibility, the sense of belonging, and say, once we've done that, then when you're good and ready, all these individual interventions are here and you can select what works for you. And I think the assessment is utilization a measure that we should be looking for? Is that what the driver of well-being is inside the organization? Is that what's going to get the exec excited about something that's being used?
Yeah.
The percentage of the business that are using the meditation app every month?
Yeah.
As nice as that is that helping anything?
Yeah. Well, the other thing that doesn't tell you is whether it's good or bad.
That's what I mean.
Does that mean that everybody's stressed out and they need to meditate, or does it mean that it's
People
great because they're engaging with the content?
And you're never going to know because we haven't done that work. So and then you've got EAPs as well. They come in for a real bashing recently, right? But they can provide an amazing support for people. Like I tried to use it twice. Once, straight through, counsellor in a week. Perfect. Like perfect for me. Amazingly helpful. Second time, didn't get the call back. Too busy, didn't follow up.
Yeah.
And there's obviously loads of stuff that's gone in with one company there's a lot of bad press on it. But like with how long it takes to get seen with public health, that can be a lifesaver for people. So is it right or wrong? Are we right to try and drive the utilization to 10%, or are we accepting that it's going to be at 4%? Instead, as an organisation, we just say, like, what is our attrition compared to the industry average? What are the rationale for people losing? What's the absenteeism doing? Look how we can develop experiments to like move towards it. And I find that it's not the obvious experiments. Often, the less you mention well-being, the more likely you are to affect it. Or would you rather another app or solution or like a better meeting culture?
Yeah.
Anyone who lives on laptops, I think that's where well-being interventions live and die, is whether you use the tech sustainably. Given that we spend 57% of our day on calls and responding to emails and instant messages, that's where I'd start. That's where the well-being team should sit in IT. If you're an organisation that people use laptops.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. And when you talk about like, I'm with you that we need better measurement. We need to show that it's got a measurable impact in terms of like revenue and attrition and all that sort of stuff. But the other thing is, you're talking about health and you're talking about people's lives, right? So I mentioned health and safety earlier. So, I've worked with some construction firms in the past, and one of the things that they were really keen to do was to try to correlate or at least look for a link between psychosocial risk and the physical risks that they were having. Very difficult to
Yeah.
do. I believe there is a link there, and all the research would show there is, but very difficult to show because the physical injuries and risks that they have are very low, very low. So, this one multinational company I was working in, I said, right, well, give me your physical accident data, and it was literally, you could count on one hand how many people had been in, serious accidents in the last year. That's great, but does that mean that therefore we don't need a health and safety function because only 5 people had their finger cut off this year?
That's
Like,
it.
ridiculous, and one person died. Oh, it's only one person though. So there's, but they wouldn't dare have that, and they didn't suggest that, by the way. They wouldn't say that because we're talking about people's lives here. But when you talk about psychosocial risk, because it's just one step removed from, it's not quite having your finger
Can't
cut
see
off.
it or touch it, can you? So
Exactly.
then it's difficult. But then, like, by not doing the measurement that we're not doing, we are where we are. So if we do that, we will get more scope to make the change. And then while we do that, I hope that legislation in the UK will start to catch up with Oz and other countries that are well ahead of us, right? The right to disconnect was announced in Labour's New Deal. We're going to be doing it. It's already been rolled back to be potentially a work directive, and then we'll see if that even actually happens. Whereas we see in countries that have done it, and like regions like in Ontario and stuff like that, that the only thing that stands to change is job satisfaction, a perceived sense of like balance with their work. It doesn't affect the bottom line. Responding to emails 24/7 doesn't make a business more profitable. The fact that managers can bother people non-stop doesn't help with productivity of a team. It just means that teams might have to get a bit more structured around what they're trying to do and spend a bit more effort on the team stand-up. And that's where we should focus our effort. So I think that things will change from that perspective, but we're a bit of a laggard with regards to legislation in this perspective. We got the Health and Safety Act 1974, a little update recently, and we got it was promised in the King's speech, the mental health review. Again, remains to be seen. But
Yeah.
I do
What's
hope
his
that
name?
changes.
David Cameron started with his gross national well-being, and then that just kind of disappeared.
Well, yeah, then Oxford have done some amazing work, the Wellbeing Research Centre, showing the link between happy organisations using like scores from Glassdoor and a bunch of other things, and they create an index fund compared to the S&P and Dow Jones and show how it outperforms. Brilliant. Does anything like that exist for the UK or any sort of thinking in that space? Like, this is what I want to see. And when we do this, we'll show that happy organisations perform better. That is then an incentive to focus on the things that will make the change, as I hope we start to pull the legislation up to fit to the bottom. But there's, yeah, work to be done. I think we have nothing to lose by doing a bit of measurement. It will be difficult, but you wouldn't go to the sales function and say, how are you getting on this month? And they'd be like, not sure, but we got some nice feedback from a client. They'd say we're 75% towards target. We're looking at, we're going to overachieve by X, discipline to this, and we can actually lead into things that are going to make the impact. And then we can start to lobby government and show how this is something that should be done. And then we can pull all up to a standard. There have to be people that are going to lead the way. And it's not easy, but it's definitely worth doing.
Yeah, yeah. The government intervention thing's interesting. I did a podcast recently chatting about that, and I didn't come up with any answers. I think I would kind of landed where I think you're sitting in the I felt like at that bottom level there are things that they could be doing more. Then my brain immediately goes to, but you don't want to take autonomy away from people, right?
I got so much stick for posting on the right to disconnect. Everyone's called me snowflake, don't need more legislation, everyone else. And I was like, you conflated two things here. Responding to an email and productivity. The French economy is 20% more like effective than the UK economy with regards to output. And I think if I remember rightly from my book, I think it's something like 40% of French workers at least take a 2 hour lunch once a week. They all step away from their desks. None of them are eating al desco like us, sorry Brits. And they are much more productive. They have 48 days total holiday or something with public holiday. And like, they will not have it. And then we conflated emails with productivity, two separate things. If you want to work late, you work late. It's just that you can't be bothered by someone else who wants to ruin your evening by a manager an email. They can still email you, just not expected to respond. It's hardly draconian measures that are going to fundamentally like damage people. And if you want to work late, you work late. You want to work on a second business, work on a second business. But if it's about productivity, we just have to look to the French. I don't like to paint us in a negative light compared to France normally, but I will in the workplace, because as much as it can be difficult to get stuff done there with the works councils, the way they work and they're unpicking that, I think has led the way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I think it's like, what was it? The right to disconnect something, the droit de disconnection or something like that. It's bad pronunciation, but it's led to change around the world. And then we're seeing Oz take it even further with psychosocial risk become a legislative requirement in the organisation. Does that mean that things are not going to slip through? No. It doesn't mean they have to try and configure and create an organisation that enables people to focus on being their best self and being more productive. I can't see a negative.
Yeah. Yeah. Although, and this isn't me with my tin hat on, talking about mainstream media. When that story came out about the Labour's idea of the right to disconnect and introducing it and all the rest of it, it was really interesting how many response stories immediately came out. Partly saying about the snowflake thing and why do we need it, but almost like picking away at it. So you talked about France there, and France have done a lot of great things. You could definitely go to France, speak to some people, and find some places where it doesn't work, right? You could find examples, anecdotal evidence of where that doesn't work, and then you'd write that up and say, "Look, it doesn't work." I don't know what the outcome there is. I don't know what people are trying to do. It's like turkeys voting for Christmas, It's like we're miserable, so everybody else has to be.
Well,
I don't know.
this is the way I've always worked, so my business has to work this way.
Yeah,
When has that ever boded well? Like, when has that ever been good news? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's the way it's always been done. And we said that about a lot of terrible things in the past that we've fortunately gotten rid of, right? There would have been lots of arguments for segregation, discrimination. This is the way it's always been done. Yeah, for sure. John Maynard Keynes said when he was alive that we'd be working 16 hours a week by now in the 21st century. That hasn't quite come to pass, but maybe with the next iteration of tech in the workplace, Gen AI, in the legal profession, they said it's going to automate 44% of all tasks. And you think, bloody hell, that's some big disruption. There'll be two schools of thought. There'll be organizations that simply get rid of 44% of headcount, focus on squeezing the remaining people and then using a co-pilot essentially to deliver the work. Problem there is that you won't then foster any young talent, and that you'll have to pay over the odds to bring people in with the experience that they've developed elsewhere. And there's going to be other organisations where the average work week for a solicitor in a city is about 60 hours, say. If you apply a 44% saving to 60, you end up with like 34 hours or something. Then you could realistically be a solicitor working a 4-day week, focusing on picking your kids up before a problem from school. That's the solicitors I want to work with, rather than the one that's still grinding through people at 60 hours a week. So I think even if we're not doing a huge amount with regards to legislation, not the end of the world. The changes are coming and organisations are implementing for themselves, and you see some very grown-up responses to big trends with regards to return to office. Spotify's response was brilliant. We treat our people like adults. They get their work done. I was like, shots fired, like days after other tech companies have said, like, get back into the office. So
yeah,
interesting landscape for Score, for sure. There's always leaders, there's always followers, but when you do the measurement, as I say, you've got some basic understanding of why people are leaving the business, you'll find that 59% of all exits in the Deloitte Mental Health Report, the latest one, were due to like preventable well-being related issues such as stress, balance, everything else. When you top that
right.
up for any decent sized organization, that is millions. And that's your business case to make change then.
Yeah. But then why is everyone so busy? Why is it getting worse?
I don't know, mate. I
Why
don't
is
know.
everyone so busy? Yeah.
I, it looks so obvious to us, and I'm just like, but we have to think there's vested interests in ways of doing certain work. If we're growing at a certain rate, we don't want to rock the apple cart. And the work week, I did my second TED talk about 4 weeks ago. I loved it. I did this little bit in it. Basically, you got to spend 2 seconds on socials. You've seen it. More burnt out than ever, more stressed than ever, more unhappy than ever. Okay, so you would think that the work week has been elongated, right? That we're working longer. It's not the case. The OECD found that the work week is shorter than it's ever been.
Right.
So it's about 1,600 hours in the UK, and in Colombia it's about 2,200. So be thankful you're not living in Medellin. And if you are, I'm sorry. So,
Yeah.
but basically, there's a reason why it feels that way. It's because the work is more transactional. So basically, we're just focusing on responding to instant messages, emails, work, and we're trying to automate other pieces. So if we look into why we feel so busy, it's because we spend 57% of our day responding to emails and instant messages. We check our email every 6 minutes. We check our phones 350 times a day. That is where, if you use a laptop, that is where well-being efforts start. We need to create space because you can't possibly consider your well-being or focusing on yourself if you are constantly distracted, jumping from thing to thing.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. I've never heard someone articulate it like that, but you're right. You're right. I'm thinking about my own experience of this. I'd feel like constantly busy, but as you say, what are the busiest days? The busiest days are when I'm just responding to emails, back to back Teams meetings all day. Like if I could work a day, I could work 12-hour day, but but spend the 12 hours doing something I really enjoy, like the design work or putting together a
It's
new
like work
course
then,
or
isn't
something.
it?
It doesn't feel like work. Yeah, you finish that, and yeah, you've been. And would I even describe that as busy? Like if someone asked me if I've been
That's
busy today, I'd
productive
probably say
work.
no.
No, that we conflate being busy and being productive. They're two different things. Most
Yeah,
organizations and your business is not measured on the amount of emails you send, rather the amount of clients that you help, the individuals you positively influence, your bottom line. And if you can then unpick the things that are not driving to, yes, we have to send messages, yes, we have to do emails. That's how we organize this session, right? But if we try and minimize those, keep the Teams calls a bit short. I know it's really like, but it makes such a huge effort. Spotify was a good example. They launched a business meeting cost calculator. So every time you put a meeting in, it'll show you the cost of the meeting before you set it up. So
really.
if you invite a shitload of people to an hour-long meeting with no agenda or objectives, they'll be like, "This meeting's about to cost 5.5 grand. You sure this can't be an email?" Then what makes you think is the objective clear? Is there an agenda? Is my role clear? Participator. If not, I'll just read the output because everyone's got Otter or whatever else now it is to try and like capture some notes. So it takes a different way of thinking about these things. And when we try and then get some space from that, then we can focus on the work and then we can step away at the end of the day. Then we wouldn't have to worry about a rights disconnect. People say, "Oh, why should we do it? Organizations should do it, just do it anyway." Shoulda, woulda, coulda. Do you know what I mean? They're not
Yeah, yeah,
because they
yeah,
haven't been configured for this. So
yeah. I love that. I'd not heard the Spotify example where they say how much stuff costs. I
mate,
shouldn't admit
honestly,
this in
it's a
public.
game changer, isn't it?
Yeah, I shouldn't admit this in public, but we're going back over a decade now, so I can share it. So, when I was getting married, so it's my 10th anniversary just recently. When I was getting married 10 years ago, I had a stag do. I went to Barcelona and hit it a little bit too hard for a weekend. So, when I came back, I thought I could come back on the Sunday night from a stag do and work a whole week in London. And I'm based in Manchester, so travel down to London, work the whole week in London. Basically, I couldn't leave the hotel room because I was too sick from drinking too much essentially. And I definitely worked out how much that cost the business, so how much did it cost in terms of the meetings that I'd missed and the stuff that I'd not delivered and all the rest of it. And it was eye-watering in terms of the waste there. Now, I'm not advocating for that, but what I'm saying is I've definitely done that from being, kind of, the top end, like too stressed out to be at my best during the week, and at worst end, kind of actually taking time off because I just needed it. And how much does that cost? And yeah,
Man, it's massive. And then there's an amazing thing I heard about. So it's not an organization's responsibility to improve happiness. And I'm like, gives you a bit of a reaction, doesn't it? But it
yeah,
is their responsibility not to worsen it. And when we flip that switch, we're going to look at how can we reduce friction? How can we create space? How can we create an inclusive culture? And then you use the individual interventions. But right now, we're telling people to use this tool to manage stress while not addressing the things that are driving the stress in the first place. It's like the paradox of awareness. You're just going to piss people off. We are doing more than ever. Record spend, expected 18% growth this year on corporate wellbeing. Right? More effort, understanding, agreement that it's important. Everyone is thumbs up, do the thing. Gave fireworks back to them. But they're not addressing the things that are causing the problem in the first place. If you look at Indeed's research, I saw you shared it the other day. I followed suit fairly shortly afterwards once I saw yours. The drivers of wellbeing work, belonging, inclusion, and being energized by your work were top three, with then trust in fourth. And if you think about those, probably none of those come from an intervention or an EAP, but they create the place where you feel like you're able to speak about what you're going through, and then you can get people can pathway you to the support that you need when you need it. So it's almost thinking about it in stages. How can we configure the organization to optimize for people to turn up as themselves, feel included, and as and when they need, there's these things over here. And how you use those is what I'm doing with Jack and Booper and stuff like that to almost like make it as engaging as possible to get people into those care pathways faster.
Mm.
But the nice thing that the National Institute of Clinical Excellence is like an upside down triangle. And basically 76% of people are none or like miles, not really feeling anything, going through anything. These people are completely neglected in all the efforts at the moment. We need to focus on trying to engage them in psychoeducation, giving them the tools and resources they need during their day to day. And that's how well-being is going to have the impact that we want, is by growing outside of a well-being team
Yeah.
into L&D efforts, into the
Yeah.
IT team,
Yeah.
into like project improvement plans, into all of that stuff. So
Yeah.
that's the evolution of it.
Yeah, that nice triangle you're talking about, I've felt that over the years. When you run these sessions that they put on, intervention sessions that they put on well-being and resilience or something like that, and you get two types of people in the room. You get one who's really struggling and probably leaves halfway through crying because they can't even sit through a session like that and have these conversations. And then you get all the marathon runners who like love this stuff. And like you say, what you're missing is the 90% of people who could or should come in the middle, but they don't because it's they'll wait till they reach one of those ends that you've just described. Yeah.
If you think about it's almost like growing the definition of well-being. Well-being, people have a bit of a reaction. They conflate it with wellness as well. Wellness is the pursuit of optimal health, and that's often an app or it's a hot stone massage, right? That's the industry which is worth $5.6 trillion. Well-being is one subjective satisfaction with their life. So I feel like we got a definition problem, and everyone can focus on their well-being. It's not this thing that's dealt with. What I don't need well-being is what I've heard a lot of people slightly older than me say as well. You don't understand what it means then, to be fair. Because
Yeah.
big part of mine was calling my nan at 12:15 every day. That's what gave me the most joy. I've lost her last April, but regret no meetings or emails I didn't quite send at that time. And when we redefine what that is, perhaps we don't talk about it as explicitly in the workplace. And we just say, how can we create the environment for you to turn up and be yourself? And when we reframe, everyone will want to focus on it. And it's often we've spoken about it to their back teeth now. And I don't know if people want that anymore in the workplace while they're still maxed out on calls,
Mm.
emails, and or on the factory line. They've got 2 minutes to have their break. And often a lot of them will just go out for a ciggy.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So you got to think, how can we meet these people? So it's about understanding how you open the top of the funnel to get people into care, and you got to think, what does their day look like? What are the moments that matter in the employee life cycle? Could be with one organisation, we had a bunch of like physiotherapists, so they didn't really live on laptops at all. If anything, they'd use their phone. So we're putting QR codes on pay slips and
Mm.
around the gym lockers. That's how we're meeting people there. So it's about understanding how you get people in. And I think what Jack has done better than anyone I've seen previously is to make it seem less well-being-y,
Yeah.
less clinical, like more engaging, more fun, which is why we partner with Premier League rugby teams, Adidas,
Mm-hmm.
celebrities like Davina McCall, Alistair Campbell, sharing their conversation. And then what happens then is it becomes a normal conversation as opposed to a well-being one.
Mm.
And I think
Yeah.
that's how we move this forwards. And because of that, yeah, we've answered about 1.3 million questions now. We're scaling up next year. Team's going to double. I'm just really excited to see where we can take this thing.
Yeah. 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 The trick is changing people's habits, isn't it? That's the difficult bit because I fall into this category as well. Like you're addicted to it. You're addicted to. There's a certain comfort in back-to-back meetings. Do you not think? Do you
I
not? Do
do.
you never find that? Like I certainly
Yeah.
do. Like there's a certain comfort. We said that productivity and busyness aren't the same thing. They're definitely not. But there's a certain comfort in feeling like I feel like I've been busy today because I've had
I
7
really, I
meetings.
really like this point because I think last week I had a day with one meeting and I
Yeah.
was like, what the chuff am I meant to do?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I've got all this time that I've been waiting for ages to like write some content, do some follow-ups, like develop the pursuit material, and then I just feel absolutely lost. And it's Parkinson's law, isn't it? And like if you got 20 minutes to do a task, you will take 20 minutes. If
Feel
you've
it.
got
Yeah.
8 hours, you will take 8 hours. And then you have to be more intentional about how you spend your day. And I find I actually then make my calendar full because if it's got gaps in, I just feel like pretty gross. And we're almost conditioned, aren't we? Like that has to be something we do. I mean, almost in the UK, we have to answer with some like moan, busy. Have you ever asked anyone how they were and they've not said busy? I did to start this call, so I'm just as guilty. But like,
And me too.
yeah,
Me
no, we
too.
both
Me
have.
too.
But like,
Yeah.
it's really difficult. I mean, you got that space. Almost the unknown is more frightening. It's quite easy to sit down all day and do the calls, as stressful as it is, isn't it?
Yeah,
You go
yeah,
through
yeah.
the motions, you tick the box, job done, you're nice and safe. But if you want to develop something different, like we're trying to do, I think you need to own that space. Neil Stevenson, the writer of Snow Crash,
Okay.
the book, the
Yeah, yeah,
series, and that as well. He said, "Oh, I hope you'll forgive me for being an awful correspondent. I'm focusing on my art and my work."
yeah.
And he was like, "I don't respond to emails. I let stuff drop. Letters don't get answered. I'm sorry. Like it might take a while for me to come back to you, but I'm focusing on my work." And that's like The War of Resistance by Stephen Pressfield's another, The War of Art, sorry. And it's another brilliant book on like how you lean into that space and that resistance you feel in that period is because often we just need a bit of time to think.
Mm.
And that's something that's completely missing, I think, in this space. Well, in the workplace, like a bit of time to focus
Yeah,
on
yeah.
the problems of tomorrow.
Yeah, it's not fashion. It's not fashionable though. It's almost, it's
No. Then you're
what's like.
superfluous, aren't you? If you've got 5 minutes yourself,
Well,
we'll automate you.
well, I'm almost thinking it's almost a bit of a I can't think of the phrase. Like it's almost a sign of that you're doing well if you're busy. Do you know what I mean? So back in when our parents were working and someone asked them how are you doing, they'd point towards the house or the Ferrari or the Lamborghini. Not that my parents have got a Ferrari, by the way, but you know what I mean. Like you point towards material goods, whereas you ask people how they're doing now, it's like, oh, I'm working 100 hours this week. It's almost like a what's the phrase? It's like sign that
It's
you're
the
doing well because you're so busy the whole time, which is just madness because there's no correlation between the two. Yeah,
Well, perhaps because you have nothing to show for our efforts, physical, most of us. Like we're not building a house unless we are. And I
yeah,
guess then you have to stand in front of your busyness as a sign that you delivered something. Whereas to answer complex problems and step into the space, as I said, 44% of the tasks of the legal profession are going to be automated. That leaves opportunity for creativity and connection and clients and coaching and community, all the C's. And we have to get more comfortable with that space, I think, and try and lean into it as challenging as that is. I have a tendency to fill every flipping minute. Like I found out recently that I have autism, which is really interesting. So I'm going on that journey as well. I also got ADHD, and I'm obsessed. My thing is what the well-being. Like I wrote a book on it. I'm practicing for talks on the weekend. I'm reading books on it. I'm reading 3 books at the moment on the subject, and like simultaneously, and every single second of my day, I try and fill with this stuff because, especially for people that I think live and work with purpose, like yourself, that I owe this to myself and to my future self and to the people I'm trying to support to be the best I can be. And to differentiate, you have to put that work in. But it's not good for me, my relationship, my friendships, and all work and no play makes Ryan a dull boy. And I'm trying
yeah,
to create some more space, but I struggle with it as well. And
yeah,
yeah, the last week, the one day free, I was like, oh,
yeah. But do you know
I
what? Do you know
got
what?
I got quite a bit.
Do you know what I think is interesting about this though is that you're acknowledging, and I would say exactly the same thing that it is a challenge. It's that sometimes there's this feeling that well-being is the easy route, right? People they think, oh well, if you're looking after your well-being, what that means is that you're just sat doing meditation and yoga and all the rest of it whilst not doing any proper work. Do you see what I mean? Whereas what you're describing there is that no, it can be really challenging to break a habit of a lifetime, which is back to back flipping meetings and filling every second of your day, and lean into being bored for an hour. Like, God, have you ever had it when you're on the when I get the train up and down to London a fair bit, and when you get on the train and your phone and your laptop dies at the same time, and
I mean,
there's
that
this moment
signal
of
between
panic where
London
it's
and
like, what the hell
Manchester,
am I
I'm
going to
like,
do?
I've not loaded my podcast. The audio book's not loaded. I'm like, I'm gonna have to look out the window or talk to a stranger in a second. Like,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
just the cost someone near me and offer them a boiled sweet or something. I'm like,
yeah,
always I like to have like Murray mints for those long journeys. I am
yeah,
an old
yeah,
man. I got that from my nan. I try and offer them to strangers, which people often look at me with fear, approached by a stranger. But you're so right. And my TED talk actually is called The Secret to Wellbeing, the newest one. And the 3 ingredients are basically what we've been saying. So you've got to understand who you are and where your vision, otherwise digital distractions and dopamine hits will continue to win out. Then you need to create the time. Quality time is different to quantity of time. And we spend an average of Gen Z spend 137 days a year on their phone. currently, and an hour and 49 is the average time spent on social media. I said we have to pull some time back from that, because as much as motivation porn might make you feel like you're doing something, it gives you a hit. Like dopamine, like David Goggins running across the desert and saying, "You don't know me, son. Like that's not getting you to do what you need to do." And then you need to focus on the little things. It isn't the big app. It isn't this podcast. It isn't a solution. It isn't an intervention. It's the little things that we do every single day. And it's a whole reframing of what well-being is. Well-being is no small thing, but made up of small things. And for me, the three things, we could break it into mental, physical, emotional, social, financial, relational, whatever you want. It's about what gives you a sense of joy, your subjective satisfaction in your life. So it's vision, quality time, and healthy decisions. That is the secret to well-being, in my opinion. If you can focus on that and work out what you need, and ask yourself, what does my best self look like? I know it sounds a little bit soft. Sit down, write it out, think about that person, step into their shoes. You need to wake up and see what they're doing. Who do they wake up next to? What's the weather like? What they have for breakfast? What's their day do? Maya Rajora does this better than anyone talking about visualization. She's built an incredible business out of it. But she's so right. And I used to think of it like a bit soft and rubbish. But I was like, actually, unless you consider where you're going, you're bound not to get there. And then when you are incentivized and that vision is so clear, you'll then create the time to work on yourself. It's only a little bit of time every day. Then it's about the little things we do every day with consistency that make a radical difference. Like if you improve by 1% every day for a year, you're 3,778% better at the end of the year with compound interest. And Mark Munns once told me about the best self bank account. You've got to consider to maximize the deposits, the little things we do every day, minimize the withdrawals, saying no to the things that don't align with that vision of your future self, and let compound interest do its thing. That's why Warren Buffett called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. And that works for your best self bank account as well as your finances.
Love it. I love it. It's meant to be a podcast, but I feel like it's been a coaching session for me. Like making notes. I'm going to watch it back.
It's cathartic for me as well. I don't get it right all the time. I try my best. I love what I do, and I feel very fortunate. A lot of years of struggle will come into this in different roles, but I know this is what I'm meant to do. And I've engaged about 20 million people now. And I've got more opportunities coming to me than I ever have. And I feel very, very fortunate. And I love it. I said on my birthday, I was like, I'm going to try and switch off on the weekends and evenings. I'm not. I lied. I'm going to work evenings. I'm going to work weekends. I have to focus even more on the little things that bring me joy. The 45-minute workout in the morning has to happen. I have to put my phone away at 9 o'clock. And it isn't this big thing. It isn't living this like laying on a beach life, living in Bali or whatever it is some influencer wants you to believe. It's focus on what you need, make space for the little things, do it every day. But don't let perfection get in the way of progress. This is what fed my relationship with bulimia for about 8 years. I used to track every calorie, had to be like perfect on it, obsessed on the way I looked. And now, not the thinnest, not the fattest, not the fittest, not the fastest, but the happiest. And I just focus on being good 80% of the time, relax 20% of the time. And I know I'm a better version of myself if I don't go 100. So I'm trying to find that balance, but it will be 7 days a week probably for me of reading, doing extra bits, working on TED Talk, second book. And when I'm very fortunate to do what I love, and most people work isn't that, and they can just turn up, get it done, and they put those balances in. So everyone's going to have a different version of what their self looks like. But I just say take the time and work that out, because when you do, then you'll step away from the things that are sucking your time. But unless you've worked out what that vision is, you're not going to be incentivized to do so. And then we'll continue to keep spending hours on cat videos, and it's no judgment. I guess what everyone does, right? But if you want to be different and focus on yourself and level that up, it takes a different approach.
Yeah. Right, I'm on it. No, sorry, that wasn't what this was about. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, I can do it. I can do it. Although you said about Bali, I was delivering a session the other day. I had a virtual producer, that helps out kind of opening the breakout rooms and all the rest of it. And him and his girlfriend have moved to Bali. They've done digital nomading. So he is literally living in Bali, like delivering sessions from there.
Fair play to people who do it, but it's not like that's not what has to be done to live this happy life, is it? They're like, yeah, you got to pack up and sell everything and live like a hermit. And some dude who spent a week in an ashram when he was 18 is now a meditation expert. No names, but I appreciate your guidance, but you've never lived a day in my shoes. So work out what you need. Take the time to work out what you need as an individual. What's my best self look like? Where am I now? How do I get there? And whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right with this. Set aim big and then put it out into the world, and you'd be surprised people want to get on board. I was like, I'm going to engage 1 billion people in a better mental well-being. I said that 2 years ago. And since then, I think I've reached about 15 million people across platforms and everything else, and it's speeding up. And when you actually put that out into the world or write it and bring it into existence, like things start to happen, you work towards it. Yes, of course, manifesting, just thinking about it doesn't do shit. It needs action. But you do the two together, and I think that's a recipe for success.
Pretty good. Sounds pretty good, right? Let's call it there. Like I say, inspiring 45 minutes, certainly for myself. I'm sure for some of the people listening as well. I had a load more questions to ask you as well, but yeah,
Oh,
like I say.
go for one more. Let's do one more. I'll do a quick fire one.
Oh, I've only got. Yeah, but I was going to ask a hard question.
Do it. Let's see if
I
I
don't know
can
whether
answer
it's one for
it
the
in a
end.
concise fashion.
And I feel like I feel like I'm taking down the tone as well because I've been on this positive thread. But all
That's
right
good.
then. All right then. So some of the work that you did was for Deloitte, right? So you worked at Deloitte, and some of the work that they do is amazing. I love the reports that they put out and all the rest of it. That is one of the industries where this idea of busyness and filling every minute of the time and constant conveyor belt of grads moving in, replacing the people who are there, partners on their short-term aim of just making as much money as they possibly can. See, I can say bad things about Deloitte. You can't. I'm sure it's not all bad,
No,
but there's a bit of a juxtaposition there between this company that is doing so much from a consultancy perspective to lead the way with well-being and seemingly maybe hasn't got its own house in order. I don't know.
no. Work to be done internally for sure, but there's a lot of amazing people there, and they join a place like that or a JP Morgan or a Goldman Sachs because that's almost the social contract, isn't it? It's like a Faustian deal, a deal with the devil. You know, if you do this for a few years, you're going to get relevant experience and you'll probably be able to go anywhere and have a pretty amazing career. So much work to be done with regards to unpicking inputs and outcomes, but there has been developments there, and there's some good people, really good people internally. It all comes back to the measurement though, because ultimately what we're trying to do is sell consultative services. So it's about focusing on the little things. It's almost a perfect example of like how can we create pockets of space to focus on the little things. And for a long time, the big four relied on the people to set it up themselves, but now there's the understanding internally that this is something that needs to be focused on. It's been a really difficult time with restructures as well, and that often puts leaves a lot of pressure on the people that remain. So that unto itself is a real challenge. And like once you go through something like that, an EAP is not going to help that. That's just time and processing. But I think it's even more important to do the measurement in organizations like that, and then understand that it's like this. At Deloitte, when I was there years ago, we developed like the manual of me. So it's like an individual thing you write about how you like to work. It was
Mm.
like 7 years ago we did that. And then you do the team charter. And I think that's what they're trying to move towards, a more human approach. And they're developing technology now that can support with regards to like Copilot and Microsoft and stuff. And I think there'll be leaders on how to optimize for more productivity. I hope to see them continue to optimize for the people inside the business as well, because I think that's been a secondary priority.
Mm.
But it is changing, and I think it's because the narrative of what well-being is changing inside the business as well. The market offering, I would always used to say to people as well, like we used to offer the royal we like finance transformation to organizations, and if you have to look at or HR transformation, if you had to look at the HR system internally, it was atrocious. I'm like, you've got the right people serving the market, but not necessarily always drinking the poison internally.
Yeah.
Change is happening, but it is slow, and it's been a really difficult time for the consulting industry. And I think it's not going to get any better really anytime soon. But the measurement is changing. I think the reports are starting to trickle back internally, and people like James Owen, James Lewis, who's leading human sustainability, and the reports that
Yeah.
have been done for years are starting to turn the lens internal. But it takes a changing of the guard almost, because again, there's a lot
Mm.
of the attitude of we always work this way, but there are new
Yeah.
leaders
Yeah.
coming in that are prioritising it more than perhaps previous generations once did.
Yeah. Yeah. Even worse than we've always done it this way. But and again, I'm not accusing any certain individuals of doing this because I don't know. But I have come across it in the past where it's almost like I went through that, so you've got to go through it. I mean, that's mad, isn't it?
It's never a sentence. It's never a sentence that bodes well for a good
No.
conversation, is it?
No. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it is changing. I know some legends that have been promoted to partner there recently, like Sam Ailing and others who get it. So I think you're going to see quite a bit of change in the
Yeah, I
business.
hope so. I hope so. I guess the other side of the question that I asked is if you can make it work there, proves you can make it work anywhere, right?
Legal profession even more so. Chatting to someone the other day, they're measured by the minute. Press a stopwatch. Now you're on the book. That when you're charged by the minute, ultimately is productivity. And if the more hours worked equals more productivity, unfortunately, well-being is not going to find a space in that day. But it's
Mm.
about how can the technology create the space then for people to work on value creation. Then it looks at different types of contracts. So it's a fundamental changing approach to how the entire industry serves clients and society. So yeah, a lot of work to be done. You better roll your sleeves up, fella.
Yeah. Nah, looking forward to it. Looking forward to it. Amazing. Well, lovely speaking to you today. Thanks so much for your time. Where can people find you? I mean, you've mentioned a few things, but where can they find you? Pretty active on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, I make a lot of noise. I try and commit to post every day. More habit. I don't know if it's always beneficial to me, but it's something I do now and just make sure I show up every day. My website's theryanhopkins.com. Unfortunately, ryanhopkins.com wasn't free. I won't call myself but it was just what was available. But you'll find me on LinkedIn and then the Ryan Hopkins on Instagram and TikTok, so I had to be consistent. So yeah, let me know what you thought. I welcome any reflections, challenges, and yeah, just appreciate you for having me on as well. Thank you.
Yeah, nice one. Thanks very much.